Welcome, everyone, to Zoom into Books this afternoon. We are talking with rocker and author Wayne Olivieri with the interviewer Burke Allen. Burke, take it away.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for a special simulcast edition of Zoom into Books and the Big Time Talker podcast, all made possible by our friends at Headline Books and our show sponsor, SpeakerMatch.com, the world's largest online virtual speakers bureau. If you're a platform speaker, or maybe you're a meeting planner and you need a speaker, check out SpeakerMatch.com. Today, we're talking to New Jersey legend and rock and roll extraordinaire, the undiscovered showman himself, Wayne Olivieri. That is the title of his brand new book. It's one of Amazon.com's hot new releases, and it's a true story of being almost famous, New Jersey famous, if you will. Wayne Olivieri joins us. Thank you for being here, sir.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, I've got a lot I want to unpack with you, but I want to start where we start, and that is, are you one of those guys that got excited about music because you saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show?
Guilty as charged. Yeah, I remember I couldn't have been maybe 7, and saw the Beatles in the living room, my parents in the chair, my older brother. We saw the Beatles, and we both simultaneously grabbed some mops and just went in front of TV and started playing. I knew right then and there that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, become a Beatle.
You know, Wayne, and you write about this in the book, this incredible journey that you've had, this life's journey that started with that. But I've heard it said that for people like you, that there really is no plan B, that once you see that or you experience that sort of thing, then there is no fallback plan, no matter what your parents tell you, no matter what other people say. That's your life's work. Was it, in fact, that for you, that you just, there is no plan B? This is what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's funny. There's levels. I feel like there's level. I've met so many musicians along the way over the years, and I've noticed there's certain levels of exactly what you're talking about. In my case, yes, the answer is yes. I mean, I didn't care, and I had to work my whole life on the side. Not my whole life, but a good portion of it. I'd have to supplement my income while I was pursuing the dream. I mean, I was full-time music for maybe 10 years, and then there was spots where I had to work, but I didn't care about the jobs. I mean, I didn't care. I mean, it was just to make the money till I can get back in a recording studio or something. And the answer is yes. Once you commit to it, something inside just takes over, and it's like you don't care what anybody says. You don't care what your parents say, what your friends say, what your girlfriends say, whatever. You just go for it, and the more you get knocked down, the more you get up, and it kind of feeds it. It's a curse and a blessing, both in the same sense. You know what I mean? It's a curse because you almost can't stop once you're in that mind set. But there's a lot of musicians that I knew, especially coming up from when I was, like, say, in high school and then into adulthood, that were like, oh yeah, and then as soon as they get to be 18 and graduated, went to college. I'll put it to you that way. They went to college. I didn't even go to college. I played colleges while everybody else in my peers were going to college. I was playing colleges in the band.
Do you when you look back on it now and you see the folks that went in the other direction and they went the safe route, and they're coming up on maybe a nice house and a family and a retirement and, a steady income for X number of years. Is there a part of you in the back of your mind that says, I zigged when I should have zagged? Or are you at peace with this life that you've carved out and this incredible story that you've written about in The Undiscovered Showman, about this life in and around the music business?
I'm pretty much at peace with it. I mean, it's still frustrating at times when you go into a store and you hear a friend's song on the radio, one in particular. But I don't regret anything. If I wish I would have known more about the business side of it as I was coming up the ladder, because I think that's where I made my big errors in judgment, if you will. It's probably partying too much. That's another thing I would say that you have to be careful of, especially the kids coming up the ladder. Back in the 80s, there was a lot of partying going on, and you didn't pay attention to the business side of it. It's the music business, and I think a lot of if I was to do it over again, I would pay more attention to the business side, thinking that it was just going to happen, but you have to make it happen.
You do have to make it happen, and working around lots of musicians, as you have at a very high level for a long time. The thing I think a lot of folks get wrong about the music business is that for every superstar act that you might see on the Grammys or on tour playing arenas, there are tens of thousands of working musicians like yourself all over the globe who are phenomenally talented, but live amongst the rest of us, and it is a job, right? So you do this though in a place that is sort of the epicenter for rock and roll. You're a New Jersey guy. You are Jersey through and through.
You got a problem with that?
I got no problem with that. You know every good diner on and off the expressway.
And I know a guy for anything you need.
I got a guy, right?
I got a guy.
What is it about New Jersey that makes the Bruce Springsteens, the John Bon Jovis, the Southside Johnnies, the Wayne Olivieris? What is it about that area that has spawned so much incredible music, so much great rock and roll?
I don't know, but if I was to guess, maybe it's because you're so close to Manhattan and that whole scene in general. I mean, I got my start in Manhattan. I mean, back in the CBGB days, that was where it all started. But I probably because you're so close to New York. I mean, we used to go into the city just at a drop of a hat. We're only 25 minutes away. So, we go to city, go to city, go to city. So I would say the city probably had a lot to do with the influence of everybody that's in the business here. Everybody that I know, musician wise, always have. The city was a place to go. You go to 48th Street back in the day to all the music stores where, it was like Music Store Row on 48th Street in New York. That's where you go to get your instruments. And the city was the epicenter, and it spread into, New York, New Jersey. That's the thing. I think that's probably had a lot to do with it.
Wayne Olivieri is our guest today. His brand new book is called The Undiscovered Showman, and it's the story of this long career. Is there sex, drugs, and rock and roll in the book and in Wayne's life? Yes, but it's really a life story of Wayne almost grabbing the brass ring many, many times, continuing to be a well-respected musician, certainly very well known in New Jersey, and this never give up spirit. It's 100% authentic. You've got to check this book out, and it's available for pre-order now at Amazon.com, and is one of Amazon's hot new releases. And there's some big names that have said incredible things about you, Wayne, and about your book. The one thing that I took away from a lot of those incredible testimonials from people like, one of the founders of the Young Rascals is, I can't wait to read it. I hope he doesn't tell everything he knows about me. That was kind of the general gist that I took away.
There's a few of them in there. Yeah. I've been very blessed with a lot of celebrity, I wouldn't say a couple major friendships, but a lot of encounters. With celebrities,
What was the first, as this musical journey started for you, the first time that you thought, okay, this is it, everything's about to change for me, we're about to make it? Do you remember that time in your career?
Too many times.
The first one.
The very first one? Oh, God. It probably would have to have been when we were playing CBGBs back in the day. I was like 17, and we were pretty regulars at a place called CBGBs. In case anybody out there doesn't know, that was the founding rock and roll club of punk rock.
Oh, legendary club.
Yeah. So I mean, we would give you a quick story. I got us a gig. A guy by the name of Hilly Crystal was the owner of the club. I went in there on I think it was like a Monday afternoon, and I stepped over a couple of bums laying outside the street. I walked in. The place is a dump. And this guy looked kind of like a homeless guy with a beard, comes walking out of the back. Start talking to him, told him I had a band for New Year's Eve. He goes, oh, come on up, come on back on Monday. I'll give you guys an audition. So we packed the band up. We went to New York City on a Monday, and I believe that Monday was audition night. Now, here's the bands that we played with that particular night. It was us. We had a band called the Rock Kids. That was the name of the band. We played that night with the Talking Heads, the Ramones, and Blondie, and us. And nobody had a record deal. We were all in the same boat. We were auditioning. So, and it all blossomed from there. I mean, it steamrolled into the point where we were playing with the Ramones on a semi-regular basis in Blondie. We were part of a variety magazine called us the New Bowery Booms. And it was Talking Heads, the Ramones, the band called the Shirts, Blondie, Mink DeVille, and Rock Kids. Like we were right in it. And I think back then was when I really thought something was going to break, because everybody on that I just mentioned got a record deal. And back then, that's the only way you could do it. There wasn't any indie things. It was all major, just record companies. And the deal was you get a record deal, you record, and then your album gets distributed. You know, your vinyl album gets distributed. And the funny part about it was we chugged along, played the circuit, and everybody got a record deal but us. We were the only ones that didn't walk out of there with a record deal. For one reason or another, we weren't weird enough. We were a very tight band. We were good. The Talking Heads, when I first heard them, couldn't even play their instruments. And they were horrible, technically speaking, but they had something weird, you know? And I think maybe because we were that straight ahead rock band from Jersey, we were much more talented than anybody else. Like Ramones were the Ramones. They flipped even us out. We didn't even know what that was. Like 1, 2, 3, 4. And it was just like this wall of blasting half out of key tunes, guitars coming at you. So it was a weird combination for us, but I really thought that was the days when I thought we were playing CBGBs in the beginning, that something was going to break.
It's amazing you were involved in that scene that now has been, mythologized in movies and books and TV shows, and people will say that they were there that were never there. You were right there. So give me a couple of early recollections. The first thing that comes to mind when I say Debbie Harry from Blondie, what do you remember?
I remember thinking she was cute. I remember one night that we were playing with her, we were upset because we were supposed to go on. I think third, and it was getting late. Back in those days, 12, 1 o'clock was a peak time, in the morning. They were open till like 4 o'clock, and we were supposed to go on. It was about 12:30, and then she complained to Hilly about wanting to go on, and then they went on before us, and we ended up going on like 3 o'clock in the morning, and half the place was empty. So we were a little upset about that. But that being said, the very first time I met Debbie was that audition night I was telling you about, and she came over to the bar. I was sitting down. I can remember she said hi. I said hi. She complimented us, me and the band, and I complimented her. And I bought her a drink, and we had a cocktail. She was very nice. Debbie was very nice. And down the road, she was being interviewed on a major FM station about maybe a year later or something like that. And they played our single, and she mentioned me. So I was very happy that she did remember who I was.
Very nice. Blondie's drummer, Clem Burke, he and I share a name, and he went on to play with the Romantics. I saw the Romantics in Atlantic City not too awful long ago. What about, you mentioned the Talking Heads, David Byrne from the Talking Heads, who now has reached legendary status in that alternative music world. What were your early impressions of David Byrne and the Talking Heads?
Well, I thought he was a pretty bad player. I didn't think he could.
That's honest. I like that New Jersey honesty.
He did. We were looking at like, what is this? I mean,
so can you say, Wayne, that you didn't get the Talking Heads? That you're like, wow, I didn't get it. This surprised me when they made it big.
Yeah, I would. That's a good way of putting it. I didn't get them because technically speaking, like if as a musician to a musician, you would say she's playing the bass out of tune. She could hardly play the bass. He's out of tune. He's not playing it good. He's weird looking, but I didn't get it. you know, and then I finally got it, but back then it was very hard to get. it was you had to see him back then. It was very strange, like live. Now remember studio time. I'm sure you know. In the studio, anybody can sound pretty good. I mean, even if you're bad, you can make you sound okay. So studio wise, their studio stuff sounded good compared to their live shows back then, way back then, before they even had a record deal. But you know, I guess they were weird enough where the record company picked up on it. You know, like I said, it was a very strange set of circumstances for each individual band. Like the Ramones had something that nobody else had. You know, 2-minute songs, 1, 2, 3, 4. So just like blasting what nonstop. You had Blondie, you had the Talking Heads, another band called the Shirts. They didn't make it so big. But yeah, it was always a little weird niche for each one of those bands that I guess we didn't get because we were just straight ahead from Jersey rockers. That was us. But we
Wayne
got over
Olivieri,
with their crowd. We still got a good reaction from everybody.
your book is The Undiscovered Showman. You've been discovered in New Jersey, but you did certainly have to be in the shadow of Bruce Springsteen, who broke out of New Jersey in the 70s and, of course, has gone on to have a legendary career. Very different than these acts that were at CBGB's. Was your early music influenced at all by Springsteen? And how do you feel he sort of fits into the pantheon of rock legends from your neck of the woods?
Well, it's funny because in Jersey, you have North Jersey and you got South Jersey. Some people say Central Jersey too, but at the time, I was living in the northern part of New Jersey. Before I moved to Asbury Park, I was up near in Plainfield, closer to New York. That's why we were into New York. But I never liked Bruce Springsteen. I never liked his music up until I moved to Asbury Park in 1982, 81, and I started hanging out with the musicians down there, and he kind of grew on me. Like I saw Bruce Springsteen every Sunday night at the Stone Pony play with another band. Just he would walk on and play, and he was good, But I never really liked his music that much. I was more of a hard rocker, like not heavy metal, but I was more of a hard rocker. That his sound was. It didn't do anything for me at the time until I moved to Asbury Park. So I would say it was a good 1982 till probably 82 to 85. And I really by 1985 I really started getting what I liked his music and him and the whole scene. Got to know him a little bit too, back in the day.
What kind of guy was he when you got to know him?
Bruce, I didn't really like hang out and have beers with him, but we used to hang at this. He used to hang at the Stone Pony a lot, and my girlfriend at the time was a bartender. And I got to know. I was like part of the family. I played on the Stone Pony softball team. Like I was in with all the bartenders and the owners and stuff. And Bruce would come in and he'd play, go in the back room and talk to the owner. I'd be there, and he knew who I was, and I knew who he was, and a couple of times while he was on stage, for one reason or another, I would hop on stage and I'd get to sing a song with him, or John Bon Jovi or somebody like that. I'd jump on. So we knew each other, but didn't know each other real personally. But he was a nice guy. I mean, he was quiet. He didn't really talk a real lot, that from what I can remember. But nice guy, okay guy.
Wayne Olivieri is our guest today. His new book is called The Undiscovered Showman. It's available for pre-order now at Amazon.com and bookstores everywhere. And you may see Wayne somewhere or have seen him, because by the calculations that I have, you have recorded hundreds of songs and played thousands of live shows in New York, New Jersey, and all over. And your book is sort of I guess it's a cautionary tale about what can go wrong, but also an inspirational tale about never giving up on your dreams. So you told me about your first encounter with stardom and how it looked like it was going to happen. Is there one more time in this long quixotic journey that you've had where you thought, all right, this is it. This is the time that it's all going to happen for me, and then it was sort of pulled away from you?
Yeah, there was a particular incident. I had the Rock Kids band had disbanded, and I started another band called Oliver's Twist with a friend of mine, Brian Hadley. And we were doing original stuff. We recorded some stuff, and I went out to California to shop the tape. They used to call it shop the tape. You know, you go out there and you try to play your tape for the record companies. And I went out there and played for a few different 3, 4, 5, 6 different record companies. And I walked into Arista Records. I believe it was Arista. Yeah. And there was a guy by the name of Rich Azra. And I played him the tape and he loved it. And I was like, almost like I was expecting another turn down, and he's like, I really like this. I was like, really? I was like, finally somebody sees what I'm saying. So he's like, you got any more songs? I'm like, yeah. So back then there was no internet, you know. So what I had to do is I had to call Brian and tell him to overnight a tape of more songs. So that's what we did. I played it for him, and he's like, I really like this a lot. He goes, I would really love to sign you guys, but we got to see you live. So I said, okay, I'll bring the band out. You know, he goes, don't bother bringing the band out. He goes, we have an office in New York City. Why don't you just set up a gig in New York and we'll come see you. So what I did was back then there was this, what they call showcasing, where you would rent almost like a theater, but it was called SIR. It was a studio instrument rentals, but they would have these rooms with a stage and lighting where you could rent them out and have your showcase there. And that's what I did. We rented a room out. We went all out. We had the showcase. We had a bar set up. We had a bartender. We invited all these record companies, including Arista, to come with formal invitations. I really went as far as like getting in a limo. A friend of mine had a limo. We went in his limo to the showcase, thinking we were going to party afterwards or whatever. And I had a sound man, a light man. We had, you know, the whole band, the whole like a giant rock show set up with smoke and, you know, theatrical stuff, because I was into the theatrics of it all. Long story short, we did the showcase. I think we only had one person in the audience. Nobody showed up. Nobody came, including Arista Records. They never showed up. We had one music lawyer, Clayton Knowles, I remember his name. He came and gave me his card. He was a really nice guy. He helped me a little bit along the way, but nobody. It was a total like no show. Like nobody came, and that I thought for sure after that showcase we were going to get signed.
How do you deal with that? You know, from that's a crushing blow. It has to be, because it's not only your job. This is art that you've poured money and time in, and you know, from a psychological standpoint, how do you deal with something like that?
That's a good question. You know, at the time it was alcohol. We went out and we just partied. You know, we went in my friend's limo. We went out and we were like, F it. You know, we were just we had fun that night, you know, and of course we had a lot of fun, and we were just laughing, and we're like, you know, screw them, they know what they're talking about. We'll get them next time. Blah, blah. It's almost like you have a self-defense mechanism inside. Maybe it's like the Jersey thing, or maybe it's just the ego thing that, you know, if you don't like me, well, you know, screw you. You don't know what you're talking about. You know, that's the kind of attitude we'd have, and yeah, it bothered me on a personal, deep level. Sure, you know, it sometimes it made it hard to fall asleep that night, you know, but then you just get back on the horse and go at it again, you know, with the more vigor. You know, that's what happened with me. And a lot of people didn't have enough vigor to do it. A lot of people would drop out. Stuff like that happened, you know. I know a lot of guys would just like say, I forget it, I'm done, you know, but it wasn't even in my mindset to give up.
You mentioned briefly Bon Jovi, John Bon Jovi, and I know you have a lot of history with him, and I know there are a lot of John Bon Jovi and Bon Jovi fans that are listening to the Big Time Talker podcast, maybe watching us online on Zoom into Books. Let's peel that onion back a little bit. When is the first time that you met John Bon Jovi, and what were the circumstances behind it?
Well, my girlfriend worked at a place called the Fast Lane in Asbury Park. It was about 3.5 blocks from the Stone Pony. And every Sunday, she was a bartender, and every Sunday she would work, and I would go there, I would say maybe 10, 11 o'clock to just hang out, and then just she get off work, I would take her home. And there was a band called John Bon Jovi and the Wild Ones playing every Sunday. They would play. And I'd go in and they'd play. And he was okay, some young kid. He was like, all right. The band was okay. I thought they were all right. And they'd be playing. And that particular summer, it was summertime, every Sunday, this is history in the book. It's proven. Bruce Springsteen, for some reason, would always go to the Stone Pony on a Sunday night. And there was a band called Cats on a Smooth Surface. I knew all those guys, and he knew a couple of them. And he would always jump on stage with them Sunday around 11 o'clock, 11:30, even 12 o'clock. And as soon as he did that, the word would get out that Bruce was at the Pony. And it was just like somebody opened the door and yelled, "Fire!" Everybody in the fast lane would just run out the door and run down to the Stone Pony. And there was John Bon Jovi and his band. Like, nobody knew he didn't have a record deal or anything. And there'd be nobody in the place. They're totally empty. So the manager of the club, his name was Tony Pellegrossi, and Eric, and there's a guy named Eric. He would come out and go, "You know what, man, just go. Just stop everything." So we started doing a ritual, and it was like clockwork. Midnight Springsteen would show, everybody leave around 12:30. Me and John. Actually, John came up to me when we first met and said, "Wow, you're Wayne Olivieri. I love your band. I saw you open up for Aerosmith. That was cool." Like, John was 6 years younger than me, but he used to not follow my band, but he knew who I was, and he got to see me a couple of times. He wasn't old enough to get into clubs, but we opened up for Aerosmith, and I think he went to that show and he saw me. So he was kind of like looking up to me, because he didn't know who he was. He didn't even know what was going to go on with his life at the time. And we became, every Sunday, we would walk down to the Stone Pony together, me and my girlfriend, him and David Bryan, the keyboard player for Bon Jovi now. And we became fast friends. And it was weird because there was something about him. I don't know what it was, but I knew I had a connection with him. I didn't know what it was, but it was very strange. But we became really good friends that summer. And then he got his record deal, and he would always call me up like, "Wayne, I got a record deal. We need a place to rehearse. Can you find me a place?" And he would call me up because and all these different questions, and like I was kind of like his mentor in a weird kind of way at the time, and I wasn't really jealous at all. I was kind of happy for the guy, But and then he just slowly, like his first tour, I remember his equipment got stolen. And he called me up and he's like, "What do I do?" And I said, "Don't worry about it." I called a friend of mine who had Lauria Music, and I hooked him up with all new equipment and had it shipped out to him. Slippery When Wet, when they needed a place to shoot their album cover, I would let him use the front of my apartment, or my spot. I would actually do a lot of location work for him for their videos. He would always call me up and ask me questions, and can I do this, or can I go to Richie's house, or can you do me a favor? And I got to know Dorothea, his girlfriend at the time too. And I found them their first apartment when they needed an apartment. When they decided to buy their house, I found them their first house in Rumson. I would be the guy that would go out with the real estate people and look at houses for them. So I was in the inner circle for 17 years probably. So I saw him go from nothing to superstar. He was the biggest star on the planet between him, Bruce Springsteen, born in the USA, and Michael Jackson. Those are the three biggest rock stars in the world at the time. And I was right there. I was being treated. It was cool because I was being treated because of the association with him. I got to kind of feel what it would be like to be famous and fly in the jet with him and in the limo with the kids banging on. It was unbelievable. It was like being with the Beatles, but you're with, John Bon Jovi, spend a lot of Christmas Eve with those guys, a lot of dinners. I mean, it's all in the book. It's all in the book.
That's right. And the book is The Undiscovered Showman. It's Wayne Olivieri's life story. Wayne is a legendary New Jersey musician. The book hit Amazon's hot new releases category as a pre-order, and you can get it in pre-order and have it shipped direct to you. You can also pick it up at headlinebooks.com, and you might catch Wayne at a gig somewhere, and he'll sign a copy for you as well. So 17 years in the inner circle. And I remember those times too. I remember the first time I saw those guys, they were opening for 38 Special. They
Yeah.
came back through, a year later, and it had reversed, and they were the headliners. And there was a time when they were the biggest band in the world. And of course, he's gone on to do okay for himself. So that early mentoring you gave him played out pretty well. You did say, though, a 17-year relationship. So that tells me that the relationship came to an end, and I'd like to hear about that.
Well, yeah, the funny part about that was I still to this day don't know why. John would have a thing where, when you're hanging out with him, and everybody that's listening to, for whatever field you're in, whether it be musician or whatever field, if you get to a higher level than someone, a lot of times the people below you that they'll approach you to try to help them, bring them up into where you are, or help them with their same field that you're in to help them get a little higher up. With musicians, it was hard. It was like John was a target for every musician that he ever said hi to. It'd be like, John, help me, here's my song. And what he would do was he would be pleasant and take your tape or tell you, okay, no problem, whatever. And then what he would do is he would just change his phone number, and that would be it. You wouldn't be able to get a hold of him. And I would always get a call from the office or Dorothea or John and say, here's a new number, because I would get the private number. But he would change it like on a regular basis, especially if somebody was bothering him, bugging him. That's how he would nick you off. So I don't know. It was pretty far along the way. I think the last time I actually saw him was at Dorothea's father's funeral. And I don't know if I said something. I still can't remember. I think I was talking business in the back, but other than that, I remember that was the last time we actually spoke to him, because it was an event. So I remember the event. And a couple days later, I went to call him, and the number was changed. So I'm like, oh, okay. Somebody's going to call me soon and give me the new number. And I never got the call. And I called the office, and they said they couldn't give it to me. And it bothered me for the longest time. I mean, I was even reaching out to Richie and some of the other guys in the band to find out what was going on. They didn't know. They said, I really don't know. John's could be, he could be, he was a shrewd businessman. Let's put it to you that way. So when he wanted to be, he could be, not exactly a nice guy if he didn't have to be a nice guy, but, I don't really want to say anything bad about it. To answer your question, I don't know. I really don't know what happened. It wasn't money, because I didn't owe him any money. The only other thing that a couple of people told me that maybe he thought me and his wife were fooling around or something. That had crossed my path. The people telling me about it, which we never did, because she was like a sister to me. But he would have said something to me. I know him. He would have approached me. I really, to this day, do not know what happened. Would like to know, but to kind of put that to rest, because every time I go into a store and a Bon Jovi song comes on, something in the back of my head goes, man, you wonder what happened.
And when was this last encounter at the funeral? What year was that?
I guess it's probably on public record where her father died. It had to be over 20 years ago, something like that.
Are you still in touch with Dave Bryan, the keyboard player, Tico Torres, anybody else in that band?
Not directly in touch, but I ran into Dave a few times, and we talked and laughed, and I had asked him about what happened, and he's like, he goes, what are you gonna do? He goes, I don't know. He goes, I just play the keyboards. I just play the keyboards, collect my money, and go home. So he didn't even know what happened. Richie Sambora, I ran into Richie a couple times. My brother Gary, he knew a lot of the road crew guys from because my brother was involved in that end of things, and the rumor that they heard was that John thought I was fooling around with Dorothea, but I wasn't. But that's as close as I could come as to why. I would like to talk. I'd ask him what happened, but.
That's rock and roll, right? Well, here's the plan then.
Yeah,
Why don't we have your publisher send a copy of your book to John's office, and Maybe that will reopen the dialogue, right?
That'd be perfect. Send it over. That'd be great.
The Undiscovered Showman is the award-winning new book from Wayne Olivieri. It's a hot new release on Amazon.com. And Wayne, you're still at it. You're still out there doing music. Tell me about your current project.
Well, I have a band called the New Bardos. It's spelt like Bardots, but it's a play on Bridget Bardot. The New Bardos. We're all original band. And the funny thing about the band is the band today, as we speak, consists of almost everybody in the book from the very beginning. My first encounter with original band was with Gary Venatelli. He changed his name to Gar Francis, and that's who's in the band. We're back together after all these years writing and recording with Gar. Dan Sky's on the bass. Dan Sky was in the band Oliver Twist, which I told you about with the showcase. He was in that band. And then John Rigo was in a copy band. I'm in a copy band called Little Jimmy and the Starlights. We do like copy stuff just to have some fun every once in a while. Not a lot, but he's in that band. So everybody I mentioned in the book is now in the New Bardos. And New Bardos is a very astute recording act. We have, I would say, we went to 3 full albums out. We have about 2 or 3 EPs and about 15 or 16 singles, along with videos. We have a lot of videos out there on YouTube. You can check us out. And we gig out every once in a while. We're more of a concert band, so we're not like a club band. So we opened up for Squeeze. We played the Stone Pony a few times. We're probably going to do another showcase, another LP release party soon. We don't play out a lot, but when we do, it's a fun show. We're called the New Bardos, and we're still recording and writing songs. We have a new we just released an album, and we, believe it or not, as of tomorrow's rehearsal, we rehearse every Thursday. I think we have like another 8 brand new songs we're working on. So we're constantly writing and recording. It's a fun gig. It's a fun gig.
There's some great music videos of the New Bardos that you can find online. So look them up, the New Bardos and
Excellent.
Wayne Olivieri. So I'm an old radio guy, so I have to ask you about the influence of New York radio on you and on New Jersey music, and those legendary New York rock radio stations and the DJs like Scott Muni, and of course New Jersey's own Eddie Trunk, who's been a big champion of rock music for years. Yep. How much of all that was an influence on you and where you are in your career?
Well, back in the day, I don't know, was it NEWFM 102.7 in New York?
Yep.
There was a lady called Allison Steele.
That's right.
She called herself the Nightbird.
Nightbird.
Yeah, and I remember she had such a sexy voice, and I remember I was younger, but I used to listen to her a lot, and that influenced me a lot. And then as I got into the whole CBGB's era thing, and then when I moved to Asbury Park, the funny thing about that is, when I moved to Asbury Park, that's where I got to meet a guy by the name of Jim Monahan. He used to work on NEW. Jim Kerr is still out there doing stuff on 104.5, I think.
A legend, Jim Kerr, sure.
Yeah, I used to play in the Stone Pony softball team, and we played against Jim Monahan and Scott Muni and those guys. So I got to know all those guys. Mark Coppola, another guy. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's sure. Like, I think he's related to the movie director.
The Francis Ford Coppola. Well, we date ourselves when we talk about that, but
yeah,
the pre-Spotify days, and when everything was on your phone days, you would wait by the radio to hear the new Bon Jovi song, the new Bruce Springsteen, and it was such an integral part of every music lover's world.
Not only that, but they used to repeat the song a lot. Like, in other words, if somebody came out with a new song, all you kids listening out there that don't know this, they used to play the song over and over and over again. You'd hear the same song maybe 10 times in a day.
That's right. And that's what, satiated the appetite for everybody to run out to the music store and buy the album or the cassette, or eventually the CD. So,
yeah, I remember wanting to have that big giant gold record on the wall. And then when CDs came out, I was like, okay, maybe I'll have like a CD gold on the wall. And now it's like, nobody even buys CDs anymore. That's a whole nother story. as far as
The world has changed around us, but if you want a great history of 70s, 80s, and up to today, rock and roll and the struggles and triumphs of a guy who's lived the life, New Jersey legend Wayne Olivieri. The book is The Undiscovered Showman. Do you happen to have a copy there in front of you?
I do.
All right, hold that up for the camera for the folks who are watching online. There it is.
Can you see
The
it?
Undiscovered Showman, a true story of an almost famous guy who took some time out to join us today on the program.
Buy my book. Buy the book.
And he's hawking the book, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, thanks for being here today. Thanks for sharing the stories. It's an incredible read. It's a fun read, and I encourage you to pick it up. Thank you, Wayne.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Rock and roll, buddy.
You bet. That's Wayne Olivieri. The book is The Undiscovered Showman. He joins us live from Jersey. And thank you for joining us on Zoom into Books from Headline Books and the Big Time Talker podcast. I'm Burke Allen. Now go out and make it a great day. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Burke.